Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the Public Works Podcast. My name is Joseph Blackman. Today, we got a real treat for you. His name is Benjamin Lucha, and he is the Innovation and Environmental Resources Manager at the City of Palmdale in beautiful California. Benjamin, say what's up to everybody.
Hi, good morning. How's everyone? Well, some might be looking at it in the afternoon. Hello, everyone. How are you?
All good, man. So let's talk about your title because I found you on LinkedIn and your
Mhm.
title was just Environmental Resources Manager, but you said add innovation because now you're the Innovation and Environmental Resources Manager. So tell us what you do all day. Like, what's a normal Tuesday like for Benjamin?
Right. Well, my routine is that when I come in the morning, the first thing I do is check to make sure that I didn't miss an urgent email between when I left and even though I'm the type of guy who, yes, right before I go to sleep, I'm one of those guys who'll check my email. And when I wake up in the morning, I'll check it, but check one more time to make sure there wasn't anything extremely urgent. And once I verified that, I checked several news sources just to make sure there's not something that came up, because sometimes I'll get the question, did you see that article? What are we going to do? Or what are we going to say? Or what are we doing about it? And so yeah, it's constantly trying to keep on top of things. And so kind of do a quick review just to make sure there's nothing that I'm not going to be questioned about later, and just making sure I'm ready. And then I jump into my day. I review my calendar, check to make sure that I'm not already late for a meeting or what kind of meetings I have, and making sure that I adequately plan to be ready for the next meeting I have. Because as you can see with my title, I do a lot of different things. And so switching gears sometimes is not as easy. It's easier said than
Sure.
done. So one minute I'm in a meeting discussing our solid waste programs and how to come into compliance with the several regulations the state has. The next, I'm discussing our wireless communication facilities in our parks and making sure that it doesn't affect the users of our parks, but that cell coverage is being provided.
Sure. Sounds like you got a wide swath of stuff you're involved with. But I wanted to go a little bit deeper into the innovation side of things. So when people think of cities, you know that okay, you got a tractor out front, it's doing ground stuff. You got you have a vacuum truck is doing this and that. So when I think of innovation, it doesn't really, a city doesn't spark to mind. So where does your brain go when they said, "Hey Benjamin, you're going to be the innovation and environmental resources manager"? Like, what's the innovative part about it?
Well, it was more like a suggestion from me, because I was saying environmental doesn't quite cover everything we're doing. And my title has changed quite a bit. It used to be technology, but nothing against anyone in IT, but I would get a lot of IT calls, and it's like, no, you're talking to the wrong person. I'll forward you to IT. And that's why we landed on the word innovation, because like I mentioned, we're involved with wireless communication facilities, cell carriers who are looking to provide 5G services in our city, come through our division for the process of doing so. I'm very excited that we're working with providers who are looking to provide fiber services to homes. And so that's where all the innovation comes from. And
Sure.
so, yeah, like you said, you don't think of, most people look at equipment, they look at construction, they don't really think of a lot of innovation. But with the pandemic, we saw that communications is a vital service. And in my opinion, it's turned itself into a utility, where before, utility was water, sewer, etc. But there was a time when people weren't using electricity, and it was seen more like a convenience than a necessity. But now, if people are cut off from their energy, their electricity, it can sometimes be a life or death matter. And communications and data, etc., is getting itself there, where people are at serious disadvantages when they do not have means of communications. And
Yeah.
we need to be involved in making sure that it gets to them.
Gosh, that's a good point. I never really thought of communications being a utility because when you think of utility, you think of power, water, gas, like stuff that everybody needs just for the
Mhm.
basis of life. And communicate, like, how many places do you go without your phone, right?
Right.
We go to
No,
the bathroom, we go in, go in the front room, go to the
right.
refrigerator. We got our phone with us everywhere. It's
And
like,
better yet, what kind of panic do you go through when you left your house without your phone?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, if you're gonna steal my car, but just throw my phone out the window. Like,
Yeah.
okay. Just
Yeah.
throw my phone out. All right, so let's talk about Benjamin's backstory. What got you into the industry? What you got you into public works? Walk us through kind of your career path from high school to where you're at today.
Yeah, well, actually, it did start in high school, where in high school, I wanted to be an engineer and I wanted to actually work on computers. And here in Palmdale, we're in northern Los Angeles County, and there's a NASA base nearby, and they had like a high school program. And so I participated in it, and I actually got to work with their IT personnel, and I loved it. I had a great time. But someone else in the program was actually working in their environmental office. And, I don't want to age myself, but back then, a lot environmental, we were aware of environmental issues, but it was never brought to my attention that there's actually careers that have to do with the environment. You kind of picture the people protesting or people saying, hey, we're destroying our planet, but not people actually working to address the issue. And so I was fascinated with it. And I was fortunate enough to be invited back for a second year. And I wanted to work with the environmental people. And I discovered that's what I wanted to do. So when I went to school, that back then there weren't a whole lot of options for environmental programs, but I found a school that wasn't too far away that offered it. So I chose to study environmental, and uh, the rest is history. I always wanted to help communities, and I worked in consulting for a little while, but really my passion was to work with communities and help provide programs to help communities. So shortly after working in the consulting firm, I started in the city, and I've been working for cities for over 23 years now.
Wow, wow, good stuff. And it's interesting because I love how you have a shirt and tie on. You don't see that much nowadays. So what's the like? What makes you want to wear actually a tie to work?
All right. Well, yeah, it's kind of funny because I am one of the few here who wears a tie. In my consulting years, and I
Mm,
didn't realize that. It was a requirement. You wear slacks, a shirt, and a tie. Casual day, you can wear a collared button-up button shirt, so you can wear a polo or something. But the shirt and tie was a requirement, and I was pretty young looking, and it didn't help that I got braces as an adult when I entered into my professional career. And kind of a funny story is I remember once we had a meeting, and it was talking about putting a trash franchise agreement out to bid, or no, implementing a new trash franchise agreement program into place. So it was talking about all these programs, how they were going to start providing services, et cetera. And one of the people I was working with brought a new employee with them, and afterwards he was laughing because the employee asked him, "Well, this is so important for this city. Why did they send an intern to work with us?" And he thought it was funny, but so I've always been under the mentality of you've got to look the role, and so I look, quite often you can show up to something and people you'll feel underdressed for an occasion, but how often do you feel overdressed for an occasion? So I always felt,
yeah,
present myself the best I can and show some level of professionalism. As you can see, I do have a sense of humor. I do like to joke around. I'm not Mr. Serious 100% of the time, but at the same time, when we're doing work, if there's an upset resident coming in and they want to talk to a manager, they see me with a tie and they think, okay, this guy's a manager. He's going to help me out. And so it's you look the role.
sure, sure. That's actually a good kick in the butt for me because I don't even think I could fit the suit that I bought like 8 years ago, and I haven't needed. I mean, with COVID and all that, like who wears? I don't even go out anymore. Like, when's the last time I bought decent clothes to like go out? So,
Well, I'll be honest. I have a few suits in the closet that are sitting there that I haven't touched for a very long time for a very good reason.
yeah,
Yeah.
all good, man. All good. We're eating good, man. That's what that means.
Yeah.
All right, so let's say you're mentoring young Benjamin. All right,
Mhm.
young Benjamin's like, hey, man, I want to progress through my career. I want to get to where you're at today. What skill set would you tell him to pick up to be successful at what you're currently doing today?
I'd say you got to be, I guess the right term for it is a Renaissance person, especially in the environmental field. It's good to have technical knowledge. It's good to have public speaking skills, etc. But really, don't concentrate. Don't put all your eggs in one knowledge basket. I guess you can say it's you've got to, especially in the environmental field, you've got to be all over the place. Sometimes you get some very complicated scientific issues that come up. uh, you need to understand it because you really can't. When someone's saying, well, why are you making us do this? Or why is it that we're going in this direction? If you don't understand it and you're just kind of reading it off of a website or something, you're not really going to convince them. But at the same time, like I said, public speaking skills, sometimes we need to present our case to others or others want to learn from us. So we're presenting. Writing skills to write reports. We're all over the place. Even sometimes psychology comes into play where when we're trying to get the message out, it's not just getting the message out. We're trying to change behaviors, and it's much harder to change a behavior versus like I'm a big fan of something called community-based social marketing, and what you hear it and you think social media, but it's actually more based on principles of psychology to help change behavior. And one of the first
Interesting.
things they teach you when you're learning that this information is that advertising has been around for a long time, but you need to realize that advertising is, hey, buy my product instead of their product. But when we're trying to get messages out, it's not, hey, buy our environmental program versus their environmental program. It's more like, hey, look,
Yeah,
there's this need. You need to change your behavior, and we're trying to convince you to change your behavior. So you
yeah.
need a different approach. An advertising approach doesn't work. If you get a jingle in someone's head, it doesn't mean they're going to stop or start doing something because of it.
Sure, sure. I like that. All right, story time. I
Mhm.
need a story from Benjamin of when something went wrong under your watch, what you did to fix it, and then what lessons you learned from it to apply to your future career.
Right. Yeah, I had I was thinking about it. I kind of have two stories that come to mind. The first one, it's going to sound really quirky and different. And it was something that for a long time I referred to as one of my most successful failures, I guess you could say. And it's for another city I was working for. They wanted to pilot a program to recycle diapers, and it was an interesting technology, but what it was just a machine that would break up you put in a bunch of diapers and it would break up the diapers and it would separate the different components of a diaper. Now, a lot of people, especially if you have little babies or diaper aged members of your family in the house, think diapers are a huge part of a landfill, but they're not. But we piloted it to see it, and it was a very successful pilot because it's impossible to know exactly how many babies are in a neighborhood. You're not, yeah, you can
Yeah,
imagine trying to go door to door asking
yeah,
them, hey, how
yeah.
many babies do you have? Yeah. But
What?
we estimated that we had over 90% participation, which is an outstanding amount of participation. Unfortunately, it's one of those issues where, like when it comes to recycling itself, almost everything can be recycled, but you have to take a realistic view of it too. It's like, yeah, but how do you get to recycling it? And so the same thing with diapers. It's like, okay, yeah, a household that has babies in it will generate a lot of diapers, but it's not a huge part of what goes into a landfill. And with the costs associated and with what you're able to recover, is it better to exercise your energy elsewhere or to continue with providing a service for that small part of your waste stream?
Interesting. So these are used diapers, right? Like
Yeah, used diapers.
I gotta see that machine, man,
Yeah.
because literally we go through. I mean, I have a 4-month-old son and a 2-year-old daughter,
Mhm.
so we go through about 7, 8 diapers a day, and like that's a lot.
Right.
But thinking about like, I don't know if my wife would be okay saying, "Hey, these diapers were worn by some other child with some other child,
Yeah.
what on it?"
Yeah.
Like,
Well, they weren't recycled into new diapers. They were
oh,
separated out
okay,
where, there's
okay,
a plastic portion of your diaper.
yeah,
There's cloth fiber portion of the diaper, and
yeah.
then there's absorbent. So the absorbent and the human waste would go into the sewer system, and the cloth and the plastic portions would be recovered, cleaned, and then directed somewhere for recycling.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, it's not. It was not like a big washing machine where we wash the diapers and send them back. No,
Yeah,
but
because there's
yeah,
yeah.
but it
Um,
just shows that sometimes you can test things, but sometimes it's what kind of results are you going to get, and is it really worth the effort to get those results, or putting that kind of effort into something else that would get you bigger results?
Gosh, I appreciate that because, and I heard this on another podcast, was that means you're being prudent with the constituents' tax dollars. Because think about it, you could have been the city. Hey, we're a city of Palmdale. We recycle diapers. We're the first city to do this, and we get all the gold stars and the awards and stuff. And I'm Benjamin. I'm the man. But
Yeah,
like, but think about it. Let's say that machine costs $200,000. Is it really solving a problem that like merits that much money spent on that? So you had to weigh it out. You did the pilot. Hey, the machine worked, but the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So it's like that the city should be thanking you, like, okay, just so you don't have to fly your flag of we recycle diapers, like you actually saved us some money on the back end. So
yeah.
yeah,
Just to clarify, it wasn't with Palmdale, so it was another city.
okay,
And,
I got it.
but
Sorry.
but yeah, and when it comes to the environment too, though, sometimes people get very passionate about it, and and I don't blame them. I mean, I can't express the kind of anger I sometimes feel when I'm behind a car at a signal and I see them open up their window and drop a piece of trash outside of the window. It's For me, it's very upsetting because I know the impacts, I know how difficult it is to address that, etc. And so, but sometimes you kind of have to separate the emotion from the need and determine, is this truly benefiting us, or would our efforts go better elsewhere?
Sure, sure. All right. Well, how does Benjamin show up year after year better and better? What's your personal and professional development regimen like?
Well, really, it's just I always want to learn. I want to learn. I want to expand my horizons. I want to better myself through knowledge and how to address things differently. Like, for example, like I was mentioning, of like using principles of psychology to address an issue, or right now I'm involved with an equity project where we're trying to figure out, now that we have fiber going throughout the city, that's just part of it. But just because you tell a household, hey, you got fiber, even if we can, for like a households in need, even if it's free fiber, does that really mean that we're helping them? It's like, if you give a chainsaw to a person to cut down trees, if they don't have the fuel for the chainsaw, how much is the chainsaw going to help them?
That's a
So,
good point.
so it's like, do these households just need the connection, or is it that they need devices for those connections, or is it that they don't have enough digital literacy to feel comfortable going online? And so even though now they have the means, they're like, well, I know a lot of people whose identity got stolen. I don't want mine to be stolen. So what is it that they need to actually be connected and uh, be able to pretty much function? Because nowadays there's a lot of stuff you can't do unless you have some kind of internet connection. So that's my mentality. It's just constantly learning about new things, learning about how to improve myself and how to improve the conditions of others around me.
Gotcha. And you said something earlier in the show that you talked about like you look for the news that comes out. It
Mhm.
might not be pertinent to what you're currently doing, but it kind of helps you go, huh, this is what I can potentially apply to my city or my position and or here's what I should be looking out for because this next city is having the same issue. I always like to ask like what are your Google alerts set to? Like where do you go and find this information? What are some periodicals? It could be websites, could be CNN, Fox, whatever. But like, where do you go to find this information to apply it to your current position?
Yeah, well, I there's a there's some like online newsletters that specifically cater to specific topics. So, for example, like I've been talking about communication, so I subscribe to those. Solid waste is a huge part of my career and a huge part of my responsibilities. So, I subscribe to a lot of solid waste, recycling, etc. I'm heavily involved with energy efficiency and just providing energy. So energy's a bit really high up on my list as well. So those are like my main focus areas. And something that you mentioned that kind of triggered a thought is about that identifying what other cities are doing, etc. And you've probably heard this several times before, but it's something great about working for a city is that cities love to share. You know, although sometimes we are competing for certain resources, etc., but most of the time we love to share. So when you have an expanded network, or even if it's reaching out to a complete stranger in another city, but you say, hey, I came across this article saying that you're doing XYZ. Would you mind sharing with me how you did it? A lot of cities are very open about it, and they're like, yeah, here's everything, all the information I have. Here's everything that went right, here's everything that went wrong. Hopefully you can avoid those issues. And yeah, and it's like a badge of honor when someone wants to steal your idea and put it use it in their city. And I know, sometimes it's more openly where it's like the cities communicating with each other. Other times it's like, oh yeah, I came across something. You meet someone and it's like, hey, you know what? I came across something that you were doing, and we looked into doing it ourselves, and this is what ended up resulting out of it. And they're like, wow, that's great news. I'm happy to hear that you're using my idea. And it's just such an interesting dynamic that people who come from the private sector coming to a city, a lot of times they're shocked at that kind of attitude where it's like, no, everyone wants to share and they want to help others succeed as well.
Gotcha. It's I love that about cities. Do you think like well since you worked on the private side,
Mhm.
I'm sure it's a lot different. Like you're not sharing trade secrets, you're not helping the firm down the street, be better at what they're doing. So was that kind of a mentality shift for you to go, hey, I can actually collaborate with the city down the street versus like holding my secrets near and dear?
Well, I was in the private sector not for very long. And really, I guess it was mentoring that kind of got me into that mentality right away because uh, when I first started with the city, someone took me under his wing and was trying to teach me up. And right away, he's like, "Oh, hey, I have this lunch meeting. I want you to come join me." And he introduced me to everyone, and it was like 5 or 6 neighboring cities, and they were all having lunch together, and they were all discussing their programs. And I was like, wow. And then they were just openly sharing, and hey, this is what we did. This is how we did it. Or hey, I have this problem. Anyone else have that problem? And someone's like, yeah, I have that problem, and this is how we resolved it. And it was like this open sharing, and he threw me into that right away and got me into that mentality right away of, hey, we openly share, we help each other, and the ultimate goal is that all of us are able to provide great services for our respective cities.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. All right, let's say I asked somebody that knew you. I said, but they don't work with you, but they know you really well. And I'm like, what does Benjamin do all day, every day for the city? What would they get totally wrong in answering that question?
I don't know. Well, it depends. I mean, like if you ask my parents, they have a hard time. I would explain things to them, and they would have a hard time really understanding what I do. So My degree's in environmental sciences. Sometimes I have some relatives who say I'm a scientist, and I'm like, no, I'm not a scientist. My degree's in environmental sciences. It doesn't mean I'm a scientist. And so, yeah, I mean, what some things that people would get wrong, I guess it depends on the sector, but some would, especially since I'm like all over the place. Sometimes they're like, oh yeah, well Ben, he deals with communication programs all day, and he's working with cell phone companies and broadband providers, or when I'm like in the environmental, like solid waste. Oh yeah, Ben, he develops these recycling programs, and so I guess it's what they would get wrong is that I'm not doing one thing at any given moment. I'm juggling and jumping around from item to item.
Gotcha. All right. What let's say Benjamin's commissioned to put up a billboard, and this billboard is in the most trafficked area of Palmdale. What ask of your community would you, in regards to environmental resources, would you want to put on this billboard to ask of the community?
Well, actually, I have worked on putting billboards up, and
There we go.
yeah, I'd say right now one of the biggest messages is unfortunately illegal dumping has become an issue. The city of Palmdale, we have about like 170,000 residents, but we have 100 square miles. So geographically, we're a very large city, but that means we have a lot of open space. And since we're in the high desert of California, so unfortunately, a lot of people see the desert as there's no life there. And they're like, it's just the desert. But I know that I can imagine tropical areas have problems with illegal dumping as well. But so really, the message is just that is telling people, hey, illegal dumping is not good. Your neighbors don't like it when you do it to them. The environment doesn't like it when you're doing it. And like I said, using these principles of psychology, it's like you're the different person. You're the outlier. You're not helping your community. And that's one of those principles that teaches you, is that although a lot of people like to say they're an individual, they like their individuality, we all want to fit in as well. And convincing them that you aren't fitting in, it sometimes would be sufficient to help get you out of a bad habit.
Yeah, no, that is true. When you single somebody out, they get in line real quick. Whether in line is good or bad, you just don't want to be singled out.
Right.
I always like to leave a space on the show for you to thank mentors that you had along your journey, and then also offer up a word of inspiration and motivation to your environmental counterparts.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've had a lot of mentors. Like I mentioned early on, when I started working for City, I had them. And yeah, some are more formal mentors. Some have been more informal. And really, it's just, thank you for teaching me how to do things, how to address things, and helping me learn. And I think it's very valuable when someone takes you under your wing and takes them under their wing, and they're teaching you how to accomplish things, how to improve, how to make things better. And so really, it's just everyone in general. It's just like, thanks for being patient with me and teaching me something instead of telling me figure it out, or this is what I want you to accomplish, get there. And so for words of inspiration to others, it's you can always learn. So don't ever think that like that joke that every time I learn something new, something old gets pushed out of my head. It is true in a sense. I can tell you that when I don't touch a topic for a while and then I try to jump back into it, I'll struggle and I have to relearn things sometimes. But there's a lot that you can retain. And even sometimes with people who maybe you don't agree with them, or you don't agree with their approach, there's always something you can learn from them, good or bad. Either, there's a good quality they have. There's nobody who's completely bad, or you can learn what not to do. Oh, well, I didn't like how that person treated me, so I am not going to do that to someone else.
Yeah, love it. All right, so let's say I'm coming to Palmdale. I text you ahead of time. I'm like, hey, Benjamin, where can I go to get the best burger in town? Where are you going to send me?
That's a tough one because there's a lot of great burger places, some that are chains, some that are individual restaurants. I'm actually more of a I like to experiment and try new things. So
Okay.
I would tell you, okay, well, are you open to trying something different? And I'm half Salvadorian, so one thing I would ask is, have you ever had a pupusa? And if you said no,
Okay.
then I'd say, okay, I have so Palmdale, we have tons of pupuserias. And I don't know if you know what a pupusa is, but I'd be like, okay, well, I'm taking you there instead. And a
Okay.
pupusa is more like it's kind of like a thick tortilla. It looks like a thick tortilla, but inside of it, you have a filling.
Okay.
And the way they prepare it is they grind all the fillings that they're going to put in there, they grind it all together and they cook it inside of the tortilla. It's not like they prepare the tortilla, they prepare the filling, then they slice it open and stuff it in there. So it's prepared inside of that tortilla.
Wow. Okay.
And so yeah, and so the most popular one is it's a carnitas, beans and cheese.
Okay.
And the way they serve it is with a it's like a pickled cabbage. We call it curtido. And since we're in Southern California and Salvadorians actually don't eat spicy, believe it or not.
Really? I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
but no,
Okay.
yeah. But since we're in Southern California and everyone eats spicy who eats Latin food, sometimes they'll serve it with some mild salsa, but don't tell my relatives I put mild salsa on it because I
Wait,
actually
wait.
get hassled about using a fork for it too. And I'm openly admitting it to it where my cousins laugh at me when they see me eating a pusa with a fork because you're supposed to eat it with your hands, but
You
that's the
know,
way.
I'm glad you brought that up because I'm a huge like fan of culture, and
Mhm.
not necessarily like culture of like, oh, it's this month and this and that, or that month and this and this, but like culture, because culture, I've heard a quote before. It says culture is stronger than like rules, or stronger than processes, because like you just said, El Salvadorans don't eat spicy. Like, to the untrained eye, I'll be like, oh, he probably eats Mexican food. He likes his hot sauce, like,
Yeah,
but like, give me the why on why El Salvador. And let's say I talk to 10 other El Salvadorians, one might call me on and be like, yeah, we eat spicy, or like, or I eat spicy. But why is that a thing that El Salvadorians don't eat spicy?
it's just that's how it is in El Salvador. It's just I know a lot of people look at all of Latin America and they associate it with Mexico because that's the first country that comes to mind. So they think that's carried down everywhere. But yeah, not all Latin countries actually eat spicy foods. And
Wow.
but I do because my mom's from Arizona, but her parents are Mexican descent. So
Okay.
Southwest in Mexico, you're gonna eat
Right.
spicy.
Yeah.
And my dad
Yeah.
learned how to eat it, and I actually didn't learn till later in life because that Salvadorians don't eat spicy foods, and it's just where they're at and just how their food was developed. And so, yeah, there's a
Gotcha.
plenty of Salvadorians who eat spicy, but in El Salvador itself, the spicy isn't a part of their cuisine.
Gotcha. Well, that's cool because I don't eat spicy at all. I don't do hot sauce. I don't want any type of spice. I want to taste the food and not be fighting the spice. So
I like spicy, but I understand what you're saying, and yeah, as a member of my family, my daughter, she loves spicy and she
okay.
piles it on, and I like spicy, but I have a limit too, and my limit's higher probably than the average person, yeah, but I do have a limit, and like you said, I don't want it to overpower the taste of everything else.
Sure. Sure. All right, man. Well, Benjamin, thank you for hopping on the show. Thanks for sharing your wealth of information and knowledge with us. To all the listeners out there, make sure you share this with somebody who you think needs to hear it. Benjamin, before we get out of here, any final words?
Just thank you for the invite and for the interview.
Sure.
And yeah, just thank you for listening to this. Thank you for your efforts because you probably saw my title and you thought environment, what do environmental professionals do, and what can I do to help? And we really appreciate it because everyone's little efforts create a big difference.
Sure, sure. All right, Benjamin. Once again, thanks for hopping on. This has been the Public Works Podcast, and thank you for tuning in.